Hey guys, this is Alfred back for another video. So today, as promised, I'll be going through the Yoimiya Vaporise team. So this team is one of the teams that I talked about in the best Yoimiya team guide. So because there's a lot of variations, I decided to make this video to basically give a more in-depth guide of how you can play this comp. For a brief overview of what we'll be going through today, first of all, I'll be going through how the team works. I'll be going through how to build Yoimiya, what are her best weapons, artifact sets. We're also going to go through some of the substitutes you can use for the team, as well as the different variations you can run. Finally, I'll also be explaining the rotations. As usual, there will be timestamps at the bottom, so feel free to skip to whichever part you wish to find out about this team. And with that said, let's begin with this team. So basically how the team works. The team basically comprises of Yoimiya and Xingqiu, so you'll be using these two characters to do most of the vaporizing. The other two characters are very flexible, so you can swap around each of them, but generally speaking, just Yoimiya plus Xingqiu or Yalan and you're completely fine. So for builds of Yoimiya, she's obviously a pyro DPS, so please make sure to get that good sweet ratio of at least 1 to 2 as you can see here. Then you'll be in a really sweet spot for her. For weapons, any 5-star is actually really decent. So if you have any of the 5-star weapons, you can go ahead and put it on Yoimiya and you'll do really well. The best slot obviously being the Thundering Pulse, which is literally made for her and has a good crit damage stat on top of it. So Yoimiya scales with crit rate, so that crit damage stat really boosts the crit value like crazy. If you don't have any of the 5-star weapons, that's completely fine. We have some really good 4-star options. So the one I'm using right now is Rust. This is the best 4-star option. If you have Rust at Refinement 5, you can actually beat most of the 5-star weapons in terms of value because the Rust passive is just so insane. You're sacrificing charge attack, which you don't even do on Yoimiya, to increase your normal damage or normal attack damage 80% at Refinement 5. So that is just so damn strong, and that's why you really want to run Rust on Yoimiya. If you don't have Rust, because this is a gacha weapon, I understand, there's a more craftable option, the Hamayumi, which is also really good. The only problem with this weapon is you cannot run this when you're using Shimenawa, because you're going to be losing this second passive or the second part of the passive, which is basically increasing your damage when you have 100% energy. If you're running Shimenawa, I do not recommend Hamayumi. Instead, try to go for Rust. Now, a very overlooked one and a really underrated one, which not a lot of people know, Slingshot. Slingshot is actually pretty decent. On top of the crit rate it gives, if you look at the passive itself, normal attack and charge attack hits a target within 0.3 of being fired, you increase your damage by 60%. Now, this basically means you need to literally stand beside the target. If not, this passive won't work. With a Geo Yoimiya team, actually, with the shield, you can actually go up front and damage the opponent really easily. That's why, in my opinion, Slingshot is so underrated if you're going Geo Vaporize. And on top of the crit rate stat it provides, that means you just have to go crit damage, especially with the circlet, and your crit ratio will be really good. So these are some of the weapons you can build for her. Obviously, do feel free to experiment yourself, but if I were you, I would instantly just go for a Rust. Rust is just so good and you don't ever charge attack anyways, so why not? Alright, now for artifacts, there are two very popular builds right now. There's the 4-piece Shimenawa and 4-piece Crimson Wish of Flames, and a lot of people will ask which one is better. And my answer, basically really simple. You pick the one which has better substats. So if your Shimenawa is really cracked, because I don't think a lot of people use Shimenawa, a lot of people farm the domain but they only use emblem, and because of that they have a lot of leftover Shimenawa. So I recommend personally building your Yoimiya with Shimenawa and using your Crimson Wish of Flame artifacts on other pyro DPS that you might have. Obviously, if she's your only pyro DPS and if your Shimenawa sucks, then you can go for Crimson Wish of Flames, and that is completely fine. But in my opinion, the 4-piece Shimenawa is just really good on her. Depending on the artifacts you go, just remember that your rotation will be different later on. So if you're going Shimenawa, there are a few things you need to note, and if you're going Crimson Wish of Flames, you can do a few things that Shimenawa can't do, but I will explain that later on in the rotation section. So moving on, let's talk about the substitutes and what can you build in this team. What are the best options you can pick for this team? First character that comes to mind definitely is Bennett. Bennett is just really strong. If you build build him correctly, he actually gives you so many buffs. First of all, you get this free pyro resonance right here, which increases your attack by 25%. On top of that, you have a really strong burst, so you gain an attack bonus based on Bennett's base attack. So everyone already knows this. His base attack and his total attack is different, so please take note. Other than the buff of pyro resonance, you get a buff from here, and if you build him with 4P snow bleeds, you get a further 20% buff when you use your burst. So all in all, you're just giving a lot of attack with Bennett. This is why Bennett is just so insane in this team. Next character you can go is obviously any Anemo character, like Sucrose you can go, Venti you can go. The best Anemo character you can definitely go is Kazuha for very obvious reasons. But basically why you want to run an Anemo character in this team is for Swirl and for the Viridescent Venerer. You see here, Viridescent Venerer basically increases your swirl damage and decrease elemental resonance for the element that you swirl. So basically most of the time in the rotation, you want to make sure you swirl pyro, and trust me, you'll be doing a lot of damage for this team if you run an Anemo character. So another option you can go for this team that is a really good pick, you can introduce an Electro character in the team as well. So in my opinion, the best is Fischl in this team. If you want to go Beidou, then I recommend running Beidou with Fischl so that you have Fischl to battery, or you can also run Raiden Shogun for Electro. But in my opinion, running Anemo is still so much better because you provide much more damage. Obviously, not a lot of people will have Anemo characters, or you might be using Anemo for another team. Therefore, a good option will also be Electro. So like I said, personal favorite picks, we have Fischl, we have Raiden Shogun, and we have Beidou. Obviously, if you run Beidou, try to run either one of the Electro batteries. If you run Fischl by herself, you can pair it with Bennett and you have a solid team already that has a lot of reactions, so it's really up to you. Another option is by running a second Hydro. So the reason why you want to run 2 Hydro is basically you can vaporize more hits. Now, Yoimiya attacks faster than Xingqiu's Rain Swords, so if you have another character which applies Hydro, then you're able to vaporize much more than with Xingqiu by himself. Obviously, if you're running a second Hydro, you're either sacrificing a Pyro Resonance or you're going to be sacrificing Swirl or another reaction, so please choose carefully before you decide to go with a second Hydro. Last set of characters you can go is Zhongli or Yunjin. Most of the time they're paired together for the Geo Resonance. Right here, basically you'll increase your damage by 15% and you decrease their Geo Res. Not so important, but the most important part is the 15%. And your shield strength basically increased by 15%, which means you're able to take more hits from the shield, which is really good for that slingshot weapon that we mentioned earlier. So up to you which variation you want to go. Just make sure that if you run Zhongli, you run it with Yunjin and it's really good. Obviously, if you don't have Yunjin build or you don't have Yunjin, you can run Zhongli by himself. Same applies if you have Yunjin and you don't have Zhongli, you can just run Yunjin and then maybe put a Bennett in the team and the whole team is basically complete. So it's really up to you what characters you have. But the most free-to-play team, in my opinion, that is really strong, you put Bennett in the team and you put Sucrose in the team, and this team is just way too strong. You have double Pyro Resonance as shown here, you have a Xingqiu to Vaporize, and finally you have Sucrose to Swirl and give additional Elemental Mastery, which you probably won't build on your Yoimiya. So this is the strongest free-to-play team in my opinion. Now for rotations, this part is really important, so please pay attention because the rotation actually differs from what characters you have and what artifact sets you're going. In this video, I'll be giving you guys 3 different rotations for 3 different teams I'm going. I'll be showing the Yoimiya Vaporize with Anemo, Yoimiya Vaporize with Electro, and finally a Geo variant of the Yoimiya Vaporize. So with that said, let's begin with the normal Anemo version. First of all, we're going to be starting off with Bennett's E and Bennett's Burst. This is to catch the Pyro Particles. Really simple. After that, with Anemo, make sure you swirl Pyro. So basically, you'll be doing more Pyro damage. After that, do your thing as Xingqiu, use his skill, use his burst, and finally, you can swap to Yoimiya and start auto-attacking with her E. Now, this part is very important because if you're going Shimenawa, never ever use Yoimiya Burst. I repeat, never use it, because if you use it, what happens is you're going to lose your 4P Shimenawa's buff, which basically means you're running a 2-piece only. So make sure you don't ever use your burst. However, if you're going a non-4P Shimenawa, so let's say you're going Crimson Wish of Flames or you're going a 2-piece, it's fine to burst at the end of the attack duration. Once your E runs out, it's fine to use your Yoimiya Burst. This is because her burst buffs your team, so please take note to burst at the end if you're using a non 4P Shimenawa. Now for a Yoimiya Vaporize with Electro instead, similarly, you're gonna use Bennett's E and Bennett's Burst to catch the particles, and before you switch to Xingqiu, use your electro character of choice. So for me, I use Fischl, so I use her E and her burst to deploy Oz. So Oz is really good. You are able to catch a lot of particles from Oz. He's able to produce a lot of particles. After that, same thing, use her Xingqiu, use his skill and burst before swapping to Yoimiya and auto attacking. Like I said earlier, don't ever use your Yoimiya burst if you're using 4P Shimenawa, and use it if you're not using 4P Shimenawa. So finally, for the Geo variant of the Vaporize team, you're going to start off by using your Zhongli E and his burst. You don't have to use his burst if you're not able to stun them. If there's just a single target, then I generally don't like using his burst. After that, you can use your Yunjin E and her burst. This is to catch the particles from her E. Finally, same thing, always use Xingqiu before swapping to Yoimiya and auto attacking so that you're able to vaporize. And from then, you should be able to rotate smoothly. So make sure you're doing it the right way, because if you're missing any other step, you might be either compromising your damage or you might be losing out on certain energy particles. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, do feel free to leave it down in the comments, or if you have any thoughts on about the Yoimiya team, or I feel like I've left out something that you want to mention, please feel free to comment as well. If you do like videos like this, please leave a like. It shows I should do much more in-depth guide videos for certain team comps, and subscribe if you wish to see content like this in the future. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.